A medical student walks into a bar and never walks out. No goodbye, no body found, no explanation, just one of the strangest disappearances caught on camera. It was like he vanished in thin air. This is the story of Brian Shaffer.
Inside the investigation of Brian Shaffer. His case has the
LSU medical student Brian Shaffer went missing.
He was an OSU student who disappeared back in 2000.
Cameras never caught him moving.
What happened to Brian Shaffer?
Brian Shaffer, age 27, was stressed out over the passing of his mother who died 3 weeks prior, and a potential proposal to his girlfriend. He wanted to blow off some steam, so he and a friend of his of several years, Clint, decided to go bar hopping around 9 p.m. near the Ohio State campus, where Brian was a med student. Meredith Reed, a friend of Clint, also tagged along with the pair and gave them a ride to the Ugly Tuna Saloon, which was the last bar of the night, and also the last place Brian was ever seen.
On March 31st, Brian had dinner with his father. They discussed the upcoming trip to Florida with his girlfriend, his mother's recent death, and his father being done paying for his college tuition. Brian seemed visibly tired from his recent exams, but there was no signs of him trying to disappear.
And after dinner with his father, he began bar hopping with Clint Florence to celebrate the beginning of spring break. After a while, the pair was visibly drunk, and that's when Meredith, Clint's friend, offered the two a ride back to the Ugly Tuna Saloon, a bar they had been to earlier in the night.
After a few drinks at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, Brian was seen chatting with two women, and the conversation was said to be flirtatious, which was confirmed during questioning later on, and Brian even gave his phone number to one of the females. When he was done chatting with the women, Brian told his friends Clint and Meredith that he was going back into the bar to say something to the band, for he had a great appreciation for music. This is the last time anyone said that they saw Brian. It was like after this, he totally vanished with no sign of what actually happened.
Clint and Meredith waited patiently for Brian, even seen calling and texting him multiple times on camera outside of the bar. Eventually, they assumed he went home by himself, and they followed suit. The next morning, Brian received calls from his father and girlfriend, but there was no answer. They went to his apartment to see it untouched, with the car still in the driveway. This is where the police made their first error, as his girlfriend contacted them about the disappearance, but they waved it off and said contact us if he doesn't show up to the airport for your trip. Ultimately, this decision to not begin the investigation right away costed the police 48 hours of evidence finding when Brian never arrived at the airport. So what were Brian's reasons for disappearing? One of the lesser talked about ones is he was actually struggling in med school. Usually when you envision, a doctor or someone in med school, you're like, all right, this guy's a straight A kind of guy, very clean cut. He's not struggling with anything, but he definitely was. And the med school thing came into more of a question when his mother passed away. And his mother's dream was that she wanted him to be a doctor. So a lot of people say this is the turning point. He never really wanted to be a doctor.
Also with his father stopping, he's not paying the tuition anymore.
Yeah, that's a big change. Yeah.
And he just found that out right at the dinner, right before they went out bar hopping.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
And pretty stressed out over the potential proposal to his girlfriend, which he was probably planning. People were talking about. So
they definitely all add up.
His brother, Derek, though, did not believe that he wanted to intentionally disappear.
Yeah.
And he was not into any hard drugs or anything like that. And in my opinion, I think if you did want to disappear, why would you just randomly disappear at a bar? I think that's just not the best planning. If you really wanted to get away, you'd probably just leave your house. And
especially if you wanted to disappear, why would you get damn near blackout drunk?
Yeah.
Unless
it could have just been some blacked out decision. He could have just been blacked out drunk and was like, fuck this. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, I've had enough of this life. No more med school for me. Not going to be a doctor. I'm going to go play music somewhere on an island in the Bahamas,
there was actually a sighting of him in Sweden, I believe it was.
There's no confirmed sightings.
No confirmed, but somebody said, I saw him in Sweden. But I don't think that
in Sweden he had 3 layers of clothing on with a hoodie and a beanie on because it was 2 degrees outside.
Someone just made that up, I think.
Yeah, I mean you really can't tell with stuff like this. So one thing that we haven't talked about yet is how Clint stopped cooperating with the police and he lawyered up. And a lot of people start to assume that when you lawyer up in something like this, a close friend disappears, you have some type of guilt. What do you think about that?
I don't really think that matters because there's some theories that maybe the police were trying to pin Clint on this because they were arguing a couple days prior, and then that they were also arguing at the bar.
Yeah,
People
they
say
were also former roommates. They separated.
Yeah, I don't think that has any backing. Just because he lawyered up doesn't mean that he's guilty at all.
He's just the most obvious candidate, like, because there's no one else. There's literally no one else. There's so many unknowns in this story. Clint is the first person you like, okay, maybe something could have went wrong here, but I highly doubt it. So now we're going to get into what I think happened. I think that when you see him on those elevators flirting with those two girls before, there was some type of jealousy for some other guy, maybe a boyfriend or someone was jealous. A group of guys maybe cornered Brian later in the night when he was all by himself. In the building, though, I don't think he escaped yet. Kind of maybe in those offices that were under construction, they cornered him, they beat the crap out of him, and they threw him down the garbage disposal. And that's how you never picked up anything, because the camera picks up directly under the bar, but you cannot see anyone going in or out of the bar, and then also the construction entrance of the offices or whatever the other building was, right there on the other side. Easy way, you dispose of them through the garbage. Someone picks the garbage up on Saturday morning. Now, I don't know how this always works. Maybe, garbage is picked up on Mondays,
Also,
Wednesdays.
remember, though, it took them like 48 hours to actually begin the search. So if the police aren't coming until Monday to really look around the area and get the dogs to come in and sniff everything out, all the evidence could have been gone Monday morning if the garbage trucks were coming and cleaned up that whole garbage. So you got a good point there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things a lot of people will bring up to this is the cadaver dogs that came into the building, searched literally everything. And they would have picked up traces of blood or whatever, so it would have had to have been like a blunt force object with basically no blood, no traces, because that would have been easily found. And then once his body's in the garbage and they dispose of it in the garbage truck or whatever, there's no way of finding this guy when he's under 20 feet of garbage in some landfill. So that's what I think happened. That's what I think is one of the more realistic things that could have happened. There's a lot more conspiracies, but I really think that's one of the more possible outcomes.
In my opinion, the most likely scenario is that right after Brian was done talking to the females, as we've seen on the video, he was probably going back inside to talk to the band, as Clint said, and then instead of actually going home with Clint and Meredith, who were there waiting for him at the top of the escalator, he didn't want to go home with them because of the argument that Clint and Brian were having that night. So drunken Brian, he wanted to find another exit, so he decided to go through the construction site where there was most likely an exit that he could have left the building from. And then the area that this bar was in was not the best.
Yeah, definitely not the best, yeah.
No. So on Brian's walk home, there could have been some confrontation with somebody on the street. Could have just been killed. And who knows what happened after that. But in my opinion, I think the most likely scenario is that Brian was just killed in the street. No one ever saw his body. No body was ever found.
And no, there's something with it is a body could have been found. Like, the pieces could have been torn apart. There was a DNA swap, another error that the police made, where Brian's and his father's DNA were swapped with someone else's, and there will be no way to know his DNA ever again.
Oh.
So that they literally could, if they find remains, they would not be able to identify it as Brian's, especially now. It's been so long. If they find remains, there's no way you'd be able to actually identify it.
I think some of the things we can cross off is that Clint did not have any involvement, even though he refused the polygraph test, he lawyered up. I don't really think that matters too much. Derek, who's Brian's brother, did say that there was something off with Clint.
Yeah, because he talked about his brother in like a negative light. Like, obviously, as Derek, you're going to defend your brother.
Right.
You're going to defend your brother, and you see anything negative about him, like, no, you shouldn't be doing this. You may have had some involvement. Why aren't you working with the police? Like, I completely get it from Derek's perspective. Because Clint, if he has anything he can tell the police that can help this investigation and he's holding it, you'd be pretty mad if you're Derek.
Yeah, and Brian's father also told Clint, if there's anything that you know, please tell us. And he still didn't want to cooperate or anything. But in my opinion, I still don't think there's really any light to that theory.
I want to get into like more of like Brian's reasons for disappearing. It's like he was facing a lot of stress in like multiple ways. The stress of college, the stress of not being able to pay for it anymore, the stress of losing his mother, who he was much closer with his mother than his father, the stress of thinking about proposing to his girlfriend. There was a lot going on in his life.
Right, but
and maybe
why would he
it became
decide
too
to
much.
just leave at the bar? Unless, I guess you could say he went home through that construction site exit, which was not seen on camera, and then left his house. But his house was like untouched, they say.
That's true, but like he vanished into thin air, absolute thin air. And I just think that maybe there is a chance that this all went exactly how he wanted it to go. And he disappeared. Because he walked through all the right places. Cameras did not pick. How is there no cameras that picked him up after he left? How is there not a single camera picking him up after he left the building? I just don't know how that's possible.
Because the one camera that was there was just facing the escalator.
So you're saying
there was still the construction site entrance, which he could have gone through, that was not seen on camera.
Yes. But what you said earlier is that he got killed in the street. How far, like you're saying, like he walked outside the bar, which just closed. Are you saying that he like just died like right away after he left the building? Because like what I said, I think that makes some sense.
It could have been. It's a longer walk to get.
It's a longer walk, but there's no way. There's not a single camera that could have picked him up, because the cops, they looked at all the camera angles. They looked everywhere at these cameras. They identified every single person that walked in and out of the Ugly Tuna Saloon. There's no way they didn't go up and down the street and try to get as much camera, recordings as they possibly could.
It still doesn't make sense to me on why he would want to disappear at the bar. Why wouldn't he just leave his house if he wanted to disappear?
That's a fair point. But I mean, that would like leave more traces, more evidence of like what potentially happened to him. I think the way he did it could have been the perfect getaway.
Maybe he wanted to leave people in the wrong direction. Like, okay, maybe it could have been a homicide. So I guess if he wanted to disappear, there wouldn't be a bad shot of just leaving in the middle of the bar with no signs.
Yeah, maybe two steps ahead of everyone. And like I said, I just don't know how, and no cameras picked him up. Another thing I thought, it was like, all right, maybe he had a car ready to pick him up, like right outside the bar, like right outside on the street where the cameras wouldn't pick him up, because he had already thought this thing through.
So do you think
once
Brian
he's in the car, you can't pick him up.
Do you think Brian is still out there, you think?
He could still be out there. I'm not saying that's what I think happened. I think there's a much more likely scenario that he got beat up by a group of guys inside the bar, or inside like the outside area where the cameras couldn't pick him up, in the construction place with the offices, and then he got disposed of. I think that's a more likely scenario. But I think the disappearance is something that could have happened, and something that you can't throw out.
Okay, yeah. Maybe that should not be thrown out. I would still say, in my opinion, the most likely scenario is that because of the fight with Clint, Brian just wanted to find another exit and leave, and then on his walk home, he was just killed by, I don't know, it could have been a gang. Like I said, it was not the best area crime-wise. So
well, I'm trying to think of is he was wearing pretty identifiable clothing, right? He was just wearing a shirt and jeans, I believe. And that, it's not like he was wearing a hoodie and like no cameras could pick him up. Like, this guy, you can't see who this guy is walking around in a dark night. Like, I think cameras still would have been able to identify the guy at, some time during his walk if he was killed in the middle of the street.
I'm curious to know what the audience says, because honestly, there could be many different possibilities on what happened, and no one knows for sure. So
yeah, we didn't even dive into like the deeper conspiracy theories today. We kind of looked at this as like as broad, as simple as we could.
Yeah.
So guys, I really just want to know what you guys think. If you guys want to delve into the deeper conspiracy theories, please go ahead in the comments and let us know what you think happened. This is the start of the channel. My name's Nolan.
I'm Dan.
And we're going to be doing this about every single week. We'll get a video out. We'll try. Just very basic overviews of disappearance and criminal cases, and seeing if we can put together what we think happened.
Make sure you guys subscribe. It's definitely going to help out the channel a ton, and I think you guys are going to
share, please.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to love it. So yeah, take care, everybody. Bye.